Hello and welcome back. So last time we made the power-up brick box scene and we also made a box scene, but we have an issue here now. When we are about to hit the power-up brick, we create the new brick but on a different position. Even though we said that we want the position to be the exact position of the object parent, we have problems because, well, this is the entire block. When we get the position, we actually get the top left, I believe, in Godot. So we're actually going to move around that, and we are going to get the position of the sprite. If you take a look, if I now select my the bricks scene, and if I click on this here, whatever this is called, and hit editable children, you can see that we can now edit the children of this scene, and we could also get their position. So why shouldn't we simply say object parent, and we get the node? The node that we are getting is of course the sprite node, and why not just get this position? Theoretically, this should place our scene right where this is. So let's actually test that out. And if we hit this, our box isn't anywhere. Why is this? Well, this is because the position of this sprite is, you can see how these are all different color. That means that these are the position in the brick scene. So the position of the sprite is 1, 1. So 1 on the X and 1 on the Y. And that's exactly where our scene was placed. We actually want to get the global position of this sprite, not its local position. So let's simply say get global position, hit save, and let's now go back to our game. And now if I hit this, you should see, there we go, our box appears wonderfully. Alright, now that this is fixed, what we can do is we can simply drag the brick. Let me just select the world node, and we can simply add the brick scene here. And wherever we add it, if we hit it, let me just see something. Yeah, I forgot to add it to the group. Basically, we just of course add it to power up brick. And whenever we hit it, we can always just drag and drop it, place it in the scene, and our other brick will be placed right there. So there we have it, very simply made and works perfectly. So you can now just drag and drop where you want your power-ups to be, and they will be there. But of course we are not done yet. We need to actually spawn the actual power-up. That's going to be also very easy. We have the power-up scene made. Let's now preload it. Oh, we actually have it preloaded. Nice. So let's now scroll down. And when we where we add the power-up brick, we also want to add our power-up, of course. So let's create a variable. I'll actually comment this. Create the power-up brick, and here I'll also make a comment. Create the actual power-up. Alright, so we need of course first to define the variable. So the variable will be power-up is going to be equal to, let me see what we called the preload variable, power-up scene. Let me just copy that, power-up scene, copy, paste it now here, dot instance. So this variable now holds a instance of the power-up. Then we of course want to set the position of this power-up, set position, and I'll just get the player position and maybe set this to be a minus vector to 0 on the X, and maybe 50 on the Y. So I want this to fly upwards when the player hits it from below. Alright, and then we set the position, and now we can finally add it to the world tree. So get tree, get the root, add a child. The child will be, of course, the power-up child. Make sure that all these variables are named correctly and that you didn't get a typo anywhere. Alright, now if we save this should work. Let me just see. Let me just see if this works properly. And we get a error, let's see. Instance impact scene. Let's see. Power up scene. Power up scene. Let me open the scene. 2D. Okay, seems to be fine. This is called properly preload. Just checking to see if I made a typo anywhere. Instance. I mistyped, sorry. I wrote instance instead of instance. Sorry. Made a typo there. Let's now test our game. And there we go, our power-up appears. And we can pick it up and we can now destroy the other bricks. Cool. But I just think the power-up moves kind of too fast. So let's go back to the power-up script and set its speed by to be maybe 100 pixels. Save that. Now run the game. And when we hit the brick, our power-up appears and moves slowly, and we can now pick it up and actually destroy the other bricks. We could, in the original Mario, when you pick up the power-up, you increase in size. I don't want to do that. What you could, but I'm going to kind of change the color of the player. So how to do that? Very simple. Let's go ahead and actually open up the player scene. And you can see here we have our sprite. If I go to the inspector of the sprite, you'll see a modulate here. And currently the color is white, but if we kind of like, we can change it to something like bluish. There we go. So when he picks the power up, I'm going to change it to this color. We will need this information here, the hexadecimal value of the color. So go ahead and copy that and then set, of course, the default to be FFF. 6 times F, of course. And we now have the value. And let's go back to our script. And when we pick up the power up, let's find that is down here below in our area 2D, where we increase our power and then remove the power up. What I'm going to do is get node sprite. So we get the sprite node, and then we want to get the modulate of our sprite node. So set modulate. Now we need to set a color, and you can see here for our color we have let me just try to show you this. All right, so for color we have 4 different options. We can type in a floating value for red, green, blue, and for alpha, or we can just have red, green, and blue, or just the color in the integer form or in the string form. We're going to do it in the string form, so get these and then add the hashtag and paste our color. That is the color that we want our character to have once he picks up the actual power up. And of course, when we get hit by the enemy, when we lose power, we will revert him to the original color. So let's now save this and run the game to see if this code actually works. If I hit the brick, power up appears. I will here wait for him. I can destroy the bricks. If I pick it up, we change color. So now that we know we're kind of powered up, and we can destroy the bricks. Awesome. So thank you for watching. In the next lectures, we'll go ahead and add enemies. That's going to be very exciting. So I'll thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Goodbye. Hello guys, and welcome back. So before we actually add enemies, what I want to do is I want to make sure that we can get killed by falling through the pit. So when we have enemies, and if I'm powered up, if I hit an enemy, they'll just take my power down by 1. But if I fall down these pits here, doesn't matter how powerful I am, they should kill me. But now nothing happens. So let's actually go ahead and implement that logic. It's going to be very simple. Let's go ahead and add a new node to the world node. This is going to be, of course, a static body because it's not going to move. I will call it pit. And we, of course, need a collider for this body. Collision shape 2D. And the shape is going to be a rectangle shape. Alright. Now what you could do is you can create a scene out of this pit and add it whenever you have pits. But for this level, since the level is basically flat, the player is only going to the right, we can have one of these pits and actually just increase the collider. There's really no need to have multiple. I think this is good enough. Let's see. Oops. There's no need to have multiple of these objects because the level is flat. There we go, that's good enough. Let's now select the pit parent, go to node and add this to the group pits. Now that we have this here, we can simply go to our player script. And here where we use our area collider to check if anything is in our area, we can also check if the body that we're colliding with is in the group pits. And if it is, we can simply get 3 and reload the current scene. There we go. I named this pit, I grouped this pit into the group pits. So basically now whenever we want something to instantly kill our character, we can add it to the group pits. You can see how the level reloads. Now if I pick the power up, it's going to kill me all the same. There we go. And you'll see that every pit kills us. You should go ahead and test that to make sure. There we go. Alright. There we go. And the final pit, I think it's coming up. There, here it is. And it works. Alright, thank you for watching. We'll go ahead and in the next lecture add our first enemy. It's going to be very good. He'll have animations. We'll animate him, make sure that if he hits us, he can damage us, and if we jump on top of him, we can damage him. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Goodbye. Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to import our first enemy. So you should have in the top left a resource to download. I'm just going to import it as a 2D texture, of course. And here it is, enemy texture. Now I'm going to create a new 2D node. If I could just find it, node 2D, there we go. Create it. I'll call this enemy. Oops. Enemy. Alright. And let's now add a sprite to this node. There we go. And let's add the texture to this sprite. And there we have our enemy. You can see it has multiple sprites. So let's scroll downwards and select that. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it has 5 horizontal frames. There we go. Vertical frames 1, of course. And you can now see if we change the number of the frame, our enemy is walking. Alright, great. Oh, great. Let me just increase the scale of this enemy a bit, because I think he's too small. Alright, that should be good enough. Actually, let's set the scale to be 2. Oops. Rotation 0. Scale to 2. There we go. Now that should be enough. And this is going to be its separate scene. So let's go ahead and save this as scene. So enemy scene, save. And I'm going to delete, actually let's not delete that. Let's just open up the enemy scene. Okay. And let's add a new child node. It's going to be a kinematic body. do it for the enemy, and add another child node, which is going to be the collision shape of the enemy. Of course, the collision shape is going to be a rectangle. And for some reason, our kinematic body was all the way up there. Let's add... it was there because our sprite is down here. Let's get that all in the same position like that. All right. So let's now position the collision correctly. There we go. All right. And of course, we need a script to move this enemy around. So let's attach a script to the node. Enemy, call this enemy movement. All right, create it. Okay. Function process delta. It's going to be very similar to the power-up script. The only difference being, of course, that this can change. This has an animation, so we can actually go ahead and copy this entire script, or we could, if you don't want to copy the script, you can retype it. Another quick thing, we should actually just a moment. Add the sprite to the kinematic body and have the kinematic body be the parent. We don't need the 2D node, so we can just let me just move the kinematic body out of the 2D node. Actually, let's change the because you can do that. Let's change the 2D node to just a rigid kinematic body, and remove this kinematic body node. All right. Delete node. Add the collision shape as a child of the enemy node and the sprite as well, and then just remove the kinematic body to the node. All right, great. Now let's go back to the script. And as I said, if you want, we can copy the entire script here, or we could retype it. But I guess in order to save time, we can just go ahead and select all of this and copy it to the enemy movement. All right, and I'm just going to increase the speed a bit, 150 maybe. And here in this case, you can see that the enemy is facing to the left, so we gotta set the movement direction to be -1 by default. And here we have the movement of the enemy, so theoretically now it should be moving. Now we simply have to animate it, and to do, we can look at the player animate script and look how we did that. We basically each frame looked where we checked if the current frame was greater than or equal to 3. If it was, we just restart it, and that's exactly what we are going to do with our enemy. So let's go to the enemy and create the function for animating. So if we look at what we did with the player, we checked the player's sprite current frame and then just simply reset it. And if it was less than 3, we incremented it. And we, of course, finally restarted the delta time. So let's go ahead and check the same thing here. So enemy movement, yes, actually, oops, I added the animate function to the power up, not the enemy. Okay, animate. So now we check if get node, so we gotta first get the sprite, of course. Get frame is greater than or equal. Let's actually see how many frames this character can actually move. So we have frame 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so if it's greater than 3, we want to restart it, similarly to the player. We're going to get node sprite set frame 0, and elsewise we got to check if the sprite is less than 3, we want to increase the sprite. So if get node sprite get frame is less than 3, we want to get the node sprite again and set the frame to be the previous frame plus 1. So we have to again get the node sprite, get the frame, and increase by 1. There we go. Okay, and here we have had a variable called delta time, which we used to figure out if we should switch the frames. So let's go ahead and add that variable here, variable delta time, set it to 0 by default. And after the animations are done, we want to reset delta time to 0 again. And in the process method, we can say delta time is equal to delta time plus delta. Okay, and if delta time is greater than 0.1 second, we are going to call the animate method. All right, I believe that's how we did it for the player. Yes, we did. So now if we save this and go back to our game, this little guy should actually animate. So let's see if this works. And we have this function animate. Oh, I called it, I mistyped it. I called it an animed. It's animate. Okay, let's check it out now. And there we have our character is walking, and now he's going to, you see, he touched me, but he didn't change the direction, so we gotta fix that. But he's walking and it's looking very good. Alright. So this lecture is getting pretty lengthy, and I'll save this fix for the next lecture, where we will also add him damaging us and us damaging him. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Goodbye. Hello guys, and welcome back. Last time we created our enemy, but we still aren't done, because now our enemy does walk, does animate, he does bounce off of other objects, but he does not flip on the horizontal axis like our player does. That's easy to fix. We're going to fix that immediately. Let's go ahead and open up our script, open up the enemy movement script, and here where we check if he is colliding, where we switch its direction, so this is for moving to the right, here we want to actually add to flip it on the horizontal, and also below when we move to the left. We already did this, so very easy, we know how to do it. We get the node that we are getting is of course the sprite node, and then we simply set flip H to be true, oops, and down below we set flip H to be false. There we go. Now if I save this and if I run our game, this should work. Alright, and he is indeed flipping. There we go. But now we want him to damage the player. Let's actually save this, and to do damage, very easy, we should actually add our enemy to a group. So let's select the enemy and add him to the enemy group. Enemy, there we go, add him, save that, go back to our world, and let's click on our enemy here to check to see if he is also in the enemy group, and he is. Alright, great, and now we can go back to our script, get the player script, and where we are actually going to handle this movement in the area, so where we check for the bodies that are in our area, because the enemy is also a kinematic body, and we cannot check for collisions with kinematic bodies in the isColliding method, so we have to use the area collider. Alright, now I'm going to check if the body that we are colliding with is in the group enemy, capital E, enemy. There we go. If it is, we want to check a few things. How can this enemy damage us? Well, the enemy can damage us if he hits us from the sides. So basically, if we jump on top of him, that means that we kill him. So let's go ahead and have another check here. If the body dot get position, so if the position of the enemy, the Y position of the enemy, is greater than the Y position of us, the player, then we will destroy the enemy. So body Q free. Else, well, else basically if our Y isn't less than its Y, that means that the enemy has hit us. So we should subtract our power by 1, and then we should check if the power is less than 0. If it is, we need to restart the game. So get 3, reload current scene. There we go. Now you might be confused a bit because we're checking to see if the Y position of the enemy is greater than our position. Wouldn't that mean that the enemy is above us? Well, in Godot, Y is positive downwards. So let's say if this is on the Y position 10, above it is 9, 8, 7. And below is 11, 12. So alright, now this should actually work. Let's go ahead and check it out. Let's run the game. And if it hits us, it kills us. And if we jump on it and we kill it. But I just don't want it to disappear. I want to have kind of like a nice animation so we feel rewarded. So what we are going to do instead of body Q free, we are going to do a few things. Well, basically, first up, we will disable the trigger. So body get node. I'm going to get the, let me see how it's called. I'm going to get the collision shape 2D, and I want to set inspector trigger on, set the trigger to be on. Trigger, well, I'm not getting auto completion. Set trigger true. Let me see if this works. Alright, you can see now because we enabled the trigger of the collision, that means that it won't collide and it will just fall down through the ground. And another thing I want to do is I will go to the enemy script, enemy movement, and in the process function I will make a check if and now I'm going to get the node, I'm going to get the collision shape 2D. Basically, if get can I get the trigger? If is trigger, I'm going to check if is trigger is set to true, and if it is, I will then get the node sprite, and I will set the frame. Let me just see what the final frame is of our enemy. Sprite frame. I think it's the fourth one. Yeah, it's the fourth one. So if the collider, if the trigger is enabled, I will set the frame to be 4. All right, let's save that, and let's actually go ahead and now check our game. This is saved. Okay, let's go back. Now our enemy is walking. If I jump on him, you can see we get the 4th frame, kind of like he's sad that we killed him, and he falls through the ground, which kind of reminds me of Mario. We get rewarded for killing the enemy. All right, now let's go back, and a very good thing, now that we made our enemy into a scene, we can basically add multiple of these enemies to our level. Hello. I can just duplicate him. Add multiple enemy scenes to our level, so our world feels alive. There we go. Add one there. All right. Let's now play our game a bit. There comes our enemy. Let's kill him, the first enemy. And now I'm going to get the power up, which allows me to destroy the bricks. Let's actually test to see if an enemy can... Oh, these two guys are colliding with each other. We have a collider here that isn't perfectly aligned, so they are colliding with that. But let me see if one of these enemies can hit me. And you can see there, it actually killed me. Well, that is because, I'm going to show you in the script now, we didn't make invincibility frames for our player. So the collision happens, and go back to our player. The collision happens, and we get subtracted 1 power, but the collision happens the next frame as well, and we again lose 1 power. So we need some kind of variable to make sure that we are actually invincible. Actually, let's do that in the next lecture, because this one is getting pretty lengthy. I don't want lectures to be over 10 minutes. Udemy recommends 10 minutes lectures. So we'll continue in the next one, and that will be probably the final lecture in this game. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Goodbye. So last time we added our enemies, and we finished the enemy logic. And we also made sure that we can now kill them and that they can kill us. But we have a small bug. Now if I run the game, basically we need to implement invincibility frames, because if we touch the enemy, it will kill us. If I pick the power up and if I touch an enemy, each frame it checks if the enemy is in my area, and if it is, it's going to subtract my power up. But you can see it instantly kills me because, well, it happens very quickly each frame. So we need some kind of invincibility frames to make sure that that doesn't happen anymore. So let's add a variable here called invincible. Alright. By default, this will be, of course, false. And we will need a invincibility timer, which will be 0 by default. Alright. And let's now scroll down when we take damage. So here we check, we say else power -1. We have to check else if invincible is false. We can do it like this. So if we are not invincible, we will subtract power of our player, and then we will set invincible to be true. Alright, so now we won't be able to take damage anymore, so I can go ahead and test that out. But this still, of course, isn't done, because let me just... Alright. So if I touch an enemy, I will take damage only once. So let's go ahead and see that. I did take damage, but we forgot to change the color. You can see I cannot destroy the bricks anymore. So let's go ahead and change the color of our player as well. So here when we subtract the power, I'm going to make a check to see if the power is equal to 0. If it is, I have to, of course, get the node sprite and set the modulate to be color, and the default color is going to be this, so all zeros. There we go. So let's test this out now. Let me just avoid this enemy and pick up the power up, and let's go ahead and touch an enemy, and there we go. We are actually black, so it's not zeros. I believe it could be F's. Alright, let's test it out now. There we go, it's F's. So you can see we returned back to normal, but we can't take damage anymore. So we gotta make sure that we can actually take damage. So let's go ahead, and when invincible is true, we want to use the timer to blink our enemy. So basically, how invincibility frames in games, what they do is, let me just click on the player character, select editable children, go to sprite, and here, let me see, we should have the opacity here on the canvas item opacity. They usually just make it so that the player blinks like this. So we will go ahead and change the opacity of the player. Okay, so let's go back to our script, and this will be done each frame if we are invincible. So if invincible is true, we want to get the invincibility timer and make sure that we increase it by delta time, just as we did with the delta time timer. So invincibility timer is equal to invincibility timer plus delta, and I'm going to check if the invincibility timer is greater than, let's say, 0.05. We're going to go ahead and get node sprite and set opacity to 0. Alright, and then we are going to reset the invincibility timer. Actually, let's do it like this. So let's get the node sprite and let's get the opacity, and we have to check. So if the opacity is equal to 1, that means that we want to set it to 0. So sprite set opacity 0. Alright. Else it means that the opacity is going to be 0. That means that we are going to set it back to 1. Sprite set opacity 1. Alright, and when this is done, we are going to reset the invincibility timer to 0. But of course, this would go on to infinity, so we actually gotta make another timer. Let's make it, let's call it invincible time 0, and let's make it so that the player is invincible for half a second. So as long as we are invincible, we will also increase the invincible time by the same amount. So invincible time plus delta, and as soon as invincible time is greater than, let's say, 1 second, we're going to set invincible to false, so we're not invincible anymore. Alright, let's go ahead and check this out. Hopefully this works. So let me just avoid this enemy, pick up the power up, and let's wait for the enemy. And you can see I'm blinking, and it stopped blinking, and I'm invisible. That's because we gotta make sure that when the invincibility time is greater than 1, we want to make sure to reset the opacity back to 1. So let's get the node sprite and set the opacity to 1. There we go, save that, and now we should have invincibility frames working perfectly. Let's check it out. First, avoid the enemy, get the power up, and let's go find an enemy. Try not to die. And you can see I'm invincible, they cannot damage me, and as soon as the time runs out, they can kill me. So there we go, very cool invincibility frames, like in every game. I believe Mario uses the same method as we do. So there we go, looks pretty good. And we have a really cool game running. So thank you for watching, goodbye.